Hoy quiero hablar de Daniel. So today I want to talk about Daniel. And what lesson can we get from Daniel in the Bible about how he prayed? ¿Qué ejemplo, qué lección podemos aprender de Daniel, de cómo él oraba? So he prayed out the window, kind of facing outward, maybe toward God. ¿Qué otra cosa? So he prayed constantly, yes?
And without fear.
Without fear. Yeah, that's getting closer. That's getting closer to what I want. ¿Cuántas veces oraba? So how many times it said that he prayed 3 times a day? Entonces, so Daniel prayed 3 times a day, but it's not in the amount or the schedule that showed his discipline. Entonces Daniel oraba 3 veces al día, pero no es en la cantidad ni en el horario que tenía para orar. Eso no es lo que probaba su disciplina de la oración. But what really tested his discipline of prayer was the trials that he went through for prayer. Lo que probó su disciplina en su oración no era cuánto oraba, no era cuántas veces o su horario, sino las pruebas que él pasó para poder orar. I mean, because it's easy to pray 3 times a day. I mean, a lot of us still don't do it. So, the discipline part. But even if you pray 3 times a day, that can seem easy if you stick to it. So it's easy to stick to a schedule and pray 3 times a day. But the loyalty that Daniel had, if somebody wants to pray like Daniel prayed, they have to have a heart like Daniel had. You have to have a heart for prayer, a heart toward prayer like the one Daniel had toward prayer. Entonces, si uno quiere orar como Daniel no es nada más ponerse en una posición, no es nada más arrodillarse, ponerse delante de la ventana 3 veces al día, sino orar como Daniel es tener un corazón en la oración como Daniel lo tenía. No es nada más seguir los hábitos que Daniel tenía, sino tener los valores guardados en el corazón. So it's not just to pray like Daniel. It doesn't just mean to have the same habits, the same prayer habits that Daniel had, with the same posture, but to have the same values that Daniel had in his heart. That's what it means to pray like Daniel. So let's just go over a little bit over Daniel's story. Entonces vamos a ver la historia de Daniel. Daniel era captivo de Judá. Entonces tenemos que ver que la historia, la Biblia empieza la historia de Daniel con desastre sobre desastre. So the story of Daniel begins with disaster on top of disaster. That's how it begins. Primero era, so let's go to Daniel. Let's go to Daniel 1. Vamos a ir a Daniel 1. Daniel 1. En el tercer año del reinado de Joacim, rey de Judá, vino Nabucodonosor, rey de Babilonia, a Jerusalén y la sitió. So the first verse says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. That is the first disaster. That is the first curse. Entonces, ese fue el primer desastre. Entonces aquí dice, and the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of God, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility. En español dice, y el Señor entregó en su mano a Joacim, rey de Judá, y aparte de sus utensilios de la casa de Dios, los llevó a la tierra de Sinar, a la casa de su Dios, y guardó los utensilios en la casa del tesoro de su Dios. Entonces el rey dijo a Aspenaz, jefe de sus eunucos, que trajese de los israelitas del linaje real, de los príncipes. Entonces aquí vemos que la historia de Daniel comienza con una serie de desastres. ¿Y cómo era Daniel? Daniel siendo una persona que tenía lealtad hacia Dios, que tenía convicción hacia Dios. Una persona buena así. Podría decir, ¿quién no diría, qué hice yo para merecerme esto? Porque en este momento había, cuando Judá estaba siendo cautivada, when Judah was getting captured, there was those who followed God, those who were trying to follow God, and then those who could not do the will of God. Estaban esos que estaban siguiendo a Dios y las personas que no hacían la voluntad de Dios, que no hacían caso, que se estaban rebelando. So there was two types of people there. And I'm just thinking about those people that were following God all along, and what they could have been saying, like, what did I do to deserve this? Entonces me pongo a pensar en las personas que están siguiendo a Dios y luego les viene este desastre, así como Daniel. Y uno puede hacer la pregunta, ¿qué hice yo para merecerme esto? Cuestionando la voluntad de Dios. Questioning the will of God. So aquí tenemos, Daniel fue eunuco. Está en el tercer versículo. The third verse says that Daniel was a eunuch. That Daniel became a eunuch. So first he was captive, and second he was a eunuch. That means he couldn't have children. So why would God do this to a person that's so faithful? Que Daniel fue eunuco, dice que ya no podía tener hijos. ¿Por qué Dios haría esto a un hombre tan fiel? Y luego seguimos leyendo del versículo 4. Dice, jóvenes sin defecto de un buen parecer, entendidos en toda sabiduría, cultos e inteligentes y aptos para servir en el palacio del rey, y que les enseñara las letras y la lengua de los caldeos. El rey les señaló una porción diaria de la comida real y del vino que de él bebía, y que él educará durante 3 años, para que el fin de ellos se presentara ante el rey. Entre estos estaban Daniel, Ananías, Misael y Azarías de Judá, a quienes el jefe de los eunucos puso nombres. A Daniel lo llamó Baltasar, a Ananías Sadrach, a Misael Mesac y a Azarías Abednego. So if you read from verse 4, so Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace and teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of the time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael, he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. Entonces, sus nombres fueron cambiados. Y si se acuerdan de ayer, los que estuvieron aquí ayer, el nombre no nada más era una palabra que se le llamaba a la persona, sino el nombre era tu identidad, era tu carácter, era algo que te describía a ti. So if you remember from yesterday, so their names were changed. And if you remember from yesterday, somebody's name, it's not just a word that you call somebody. It's not just like a label that you put on somebody, but a name is your identity. A name has to do with your character. Entonces su nombre fue cambiado, su identidad fue menospreciada. Hay un versículo en Deuteronomio, y no lo pude encontrar. So his name was changed. So that means that his identity was done away with. And you know, and it's like if somebody changes your name, they change your identity. They get rid of your history. It's kind of like when you get baptized. When you get baptized, you lose the old you, and you become a new self. But these people, they were getting baptized into Babylon, so that their old self died away, and now they were new selves. Now there were new people baptized into Babylon. And what happens when your old self dies away? You have to give up your history, you have to give up your traditions, you have to give up your family. So that, and this makes me think of a scenario where like, maybe somewhere along the line, you see your parents, and they say, oh, it's Daniel. Hey, Daniel, I haven't seen you in so many years, or somebody from your family. And you have to say, no, I'm not Daniel. I'm not your son. The history that I had before is no longer my history. The beliefs that I had before are no longer my beliefs. Now I'm somebody else. So in this effect, where their names are being changed, they are dying. They have to put the old selves away. Entonces, Tomás estaba diciendo que en esta ocasión, cuando su identidad fue cambiada, es como ser bautizados, porque cuando eres bautizado, la vieja persona se muere. Entonces tienes que dejar todas tus tradiciones, todas tus creencias, y eres una nueva persona. Y nomás imagínate estar en esa situación y que luego venga alguien de tu familia que te reconoce y dice, oh, es Daniel. Y tú tienes que decir, no, no soy Daniel. Porque todas las creencias que tenía la familia que tú tenías, ya no eres parte de eso. Eres una nueva persona. Están siendo bautizados, no en Cristo, están siendo bautizados en Babilonia. And this also reminds me of a scene in a movie of, I don't know I haven't seen the movie, but my friends told me about it, and I saw the scene on YouTube, where African slaves were brought into America, and I think the slave, the black man's, the African man's name was Kente Kunti,
Roots.
and
The movie's
yeah,
Roots.
Roots, yeah, well, you've seen the scene, right? They're trying to give him an American name, I guess, and so to give him that name, so that he could get rid of his old identity, they name him Toby, but he doesn't want to be called Toby. And so the process is, the baptism process is that they put him up in a pole, and he has to say, I am Toby, my name is Toby. And they whip him until he says, my name is Toby. And he keeps saying, my name is Kenta Quincy. And so they whip him. And, they whip him with, I don't know if that's just part of the movie or if that's how they actually did it, but the point is that they torture him. And they torture him until until he submits and he says, I am Toby. So that's the baptism process. And so they're trying to get rid of all of his history. Entonces, era una esto me recuerda a una película. Los esclavos africanos que traían de África le cambiaban los nombres para que se deshacieran de su historia. Entonces, como esclavo, para cambiarle los nombres, en esta película la persona africana se llamaba Kenta Kunti. Para ser un esclavo, su nombre de esclavo iba a ser Toby. Entonces, el proceso de bautizarlos era que les ponían en un palo, los amarraban en un palo y les daban con un ¿cómo se dice? Les daban latigazos hasta que dijeran, yo me llamo Toby. Entonces, en esa situación, si te cambias tu nombre, ya no tienes tu familia, ya no tienes tu tradición, pero eso lo hacen a la fuerza. So, Daniel was baptized into Babylon. And so, this also reminds me of Deuteronomy. It reminds me of Deuteronomy because it's part of the curses that God mentioned. Vamos a ir a Deuteronomio 28. It's part of the curses that God mentioned that would happen to Israel if they were to stray away. Esto me recuerda a Deuteronomio porque son partes de las consecuencias de la desobediencia que Dios le había dado, que Dios le había dicho a Israel que iban a tener. Dice, from verse 15, so Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. Pero si no obedeces al Señor tu Dios para poner por obra todas tus mandamientos y normas que te ordeno hoy, vendrán sobre ti y te alcanzarán las siguientes maldiciones. So the following curses will reach you. So verse 16. Maldito serás en la ciudad y en el campo. Maldito tu canastillo y el lugar donde amasas tu harina. Maldito el fruto de tu vientre, de tu tierra, y la cría de tus vacas y ovejas. Maldito serás en tu entrar y en tu salir. So I'm going to continue in verse 20. It says, el Señor enviará contra ti maldición, desastre y amenaza, en cuanto pongas tu mano hasta que seas destruido y perezcas presto a causa de la maldad de tus obras, por las que me habrás dejado. El Señor traerá sobre ti mortandad hasta consumir en la tierra que entras a poseer. So there's all these curses upon curses, right? And I just wanted to read it in English as well, because it has a different effect. So I'll continue from verse 22. So chapter 28, verse 22. It says, y el versículo 22 sigue. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease and with fever, inflammation, and fiery heat, and with drought, and with blight, and with mildew. They shall pursue you until you perish. And the heavens over your head shall be bronze, and the earth under you shall be iron. The Lord will make the rain of your land powder. From heaven dust shall come down on you until you are destroyed. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. And you shall be a horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. And your dead body shall be food for all the birds of the air and for the beasts of the earth. And there shall be no one to frighten them away. So it continues with all these curses. But there's one verse that I couldn't find that says, it will be as if I never blessed you. It will be as if you were never my chosen people. Hay un versículo que está por ahí que dice, tu situación va a ser tan mala, tan trágica, que va a ser como si yo nunca te había bendecido. Va a ser como si yo nunca te hubiera escogido. Todo lo bueno te olvidarás de eso. Everything good, you'll forget about that. Nobody will remember that. When people look at you, they won't see a chosen people. They won't see Israel. They won't see any sign of me in you. So it almost seems in these curses like, and if you think about Daniel's situation, it seems like even God did not want them to remember him. It's like God sent them to Babylon so that they could forget about it. He was angry at Israel. He was angry at Judah. And he said, you know what? Just go to Babylon. Just forget that I ever existed. I want to get rid of your history. I want to change your name. Get rid of your history. I want to clean your memory. I want to get rid of this nation. You were never my people. Entonces, en esa situación, si se comparan a eso, cuando le cambian el nombre a Daniel, es como si ni Dios quisiera que lo recordara. Es como si Dios le hubiera dicho, ¿sabes qué? Váyanse a Babilonia y olvídense de mí. Olvídense de que yo una vez eran mi nación. Olvídate de tu pasado. No quiero nada que ver con ustedes. La historia de Daniel comenzó con desastre sobre desastre de parte de Dios. Pero ¿Daniel merecía esto? ¿Por qué Daniel merecía esto? Y cualquier otra persona cuestionaría la voluntad de Dios. Cualquier otra persona cuestionaría diciendo, ¿por qué me merezco esto? So, this happened to Daniel. This is the beginning of Daniel's story. And any other person would say, why is this happening to me? Why do I deserve this? But what was Daniel's response? And we look at Daniel 1 verse 8. Entonces, vemos, cualquier otra persona diría, ¿por qué me merezco esto? Pero ¿qué dice Daniel? Daniel 1 verso 8. Can somebody read it? So, but Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food. So Daniel resolved. Daniel propuso en su corazón. Y sabes que Daniel no cuestionó a Dios, porque los que cuestionan la voluntad de Dios, los que dicen, ¿por qué me merezco esto?, son los que se lo merecen. Son los que siempre están negando la voluntad de Dios. Ellos, los que dicen esto, aun cuando están en bendición, se siguen quejando. Los dignos, los que aceptan la voluntad de Dios, aceptan las maldiciones así como las bendiciones. So, Daniel, if you look at 1:8, Daniel does not question God's will, because those people that ask, why is God doing this to me? Why do I deserve this? Are the ones that deserve it. Because them, even if they were being blessed, they would still go against God. They would still complain about what God is doing to them. Those that are actually worthy are the ones that accept God's will no matter what. That accept the curses as well as the blessings. You see, so let's go to Job 2:10 and Job 1:21. Job 2:10 y Job 1:21. And Job 2:10 says, so I'll start from verse 9. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive the good from God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this, Job did not sin his lips. So, leí el capítulo 2, versículo 10. Vamos a leer el capítulo 1:21. Job 1:21 en español. So, Job 1:21. Desnudo salí del seno de mi madre y desnudo me iré. El Señor dio y Él quitó. Bendito sea su nombre. So the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. So someone who's following God, someone who's following the will of God, who's accepting the will of God, is someone who accepts the blessings as well as the curses, who accepts the blessings as well as the punishments, the rewards as well as the punishments, who knows that God is in charge, and whether God wants to give or take away, there's nothing you can do about it, first of all, and it'd be best if you accept it. Daniel, a pesar de ser cautivo, a pesar de que no se merecía ese trato, de ser entrenado para olvidarse y ser echado de Dios, a pesar de que no se merecía ser olvidado por Dios, propuso en su corazón mantenerse, aferrarse de Dios. Estos primeros versículos del libro expresan el valor en el corazón de Daniel. Y ese es el valor que tenemos. Si queremos orar como Daniel, tenemos que tener ese mismo valor. So Daniel, even though he was captive, and even though he didn't deserve that treatment, even though he didn't deserve being trained to forget God and to be cast away from God's presence, even though he didn't deserve to be forgotten by God, he still resolved in his heart to hold on to God. And in these first verses, we see the expression of the values that were in Daniel's heart. And if we want to pray like Daniel, we have to keep those values as well. And so we see that Daniel, as well as each of us, is not, as should each of us should do, is not concerned about his situation. He does not care about whether God abandoned him or not. He proposed in his heart to follow God. And following God is, because following God is not a bargain. It's not like, oh, I follow God because there's these good things, but if these things happen, then I'm not going to follow. We don't bargain whether we follow God or not. We should not make the decision to follow God because of good things or bad things that happen to us. Following God is not a bargain, it's a conviction that we should have. It's a decision. Entonces, a Daniel no le importa su situación. A él no le importa si Dios lo abandonó o no. Él propuso en su corazón. Porque el seguir a Dios no tiene que ser no tiene que ser un trato, una conveniencia, sino el seguir a Dios es una convicción, es una decisión que usted hace. No lo hace por conveniencia, no lo hace porque Dios le va a dar bendiciones, lo hace porque va a decidir. And so we get Daniel's unconditional loyalty and unconditional faith. And let's go to Daniel 3. Daniel 3, del 16 al 18. And so we see an example of their unconditional loyalty and their unconditional faith. And this is, I always refer to this example about how we should pray. The kind of conviction that we should have when we pray. And just when we follow God in general. Esta es la forma, la convicción que tenemos que tener cuando oramos y cuando seguimos a Dios. Vamos a ir a Daniel 3, del 16 al 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these are Daniel's friends. Estos son los amigos de Daniel. They answered the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Entonces aquí tienen una fe incondicional. Que Dios los va a salvar. They have an unconditional faith that God is going to save them. Just like we read yesterday in Mark 11:24. En Marcos 11:24 que dice, cuando oras por algo, ten fe como si ya lo hubieras recibido. In Mark 11:24 it says, when you pray for something, have faith like if you have already received it. So that's the type of faith you have to have when you pray, first of all. And I just imagine them walking up to the fiery furnace. And the closer they get, they're probably wondering, is God going to save me now? Is God going to save me now? When is God going to save me? When is God going to save me? They could have been wondering that. But the type of faith that they had, they already believed that God already saved them. So it didn't matter how close they got to the furnace. They were not afraid. They did not doubt. Entonces, cualquier persona en esa situación, si tiene fe que Dios lo va a salvar, me imagino que cualquier otra persona, mientras se acerca al horno, va diciendo en su mente, cuando Dios me va a salvar, ¿me va a salvar ahorita? ¿Me va a salvar ahorita? ¿Me va a salvar ahorita? Ya se está acercando más y más al horno. Y dice, ay, como que no. Entonces, está dudando. Pero en Marcos 11:24 dice, como si ya lo hubieras recibido. Entonces ellos estaban caminando, pero ellos tenían la fe como si ya Dios lo hubiera salvado. Y con esa fe, no importa qué cerca estás del horno, tú ya sabes que Dios ya te salvó.
Pastor, pero de todas maneras estaban dispuestos a morir.
No. So esa es la primera. Y la segunda cosa, so that's the first thing, unconditional faith. But then there was unconditional loyalty as well. And we read the next verse. Entonces, lo primero es fe incondicional. Y lo segundo es lealtad incondicional. Y vamos al siguiente versículo. So I'll read from 17 again. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. ¿Cómo dice en español? El versículo 18.
Has de saber, oh rey, que no seguiremos a tus dioses, ni tampoco adoraremos la estatua que has levantado.
Sí. Entonces, fe incondicional, lealtad incondicional. Fe incondicional lo vemos en el versículo 17 y lealtad incondicional en el versículo 18. Y esto me parece a lo que mencioné ayer en Juan 14, 13 y 14. So let's go to John 14, verses 13 and 14. This is from yesterday. They say, whatever you ask in my name, this I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. So, whatever you ask in my name. So you have to have that conviction to be able to do whatever God wants you to do, to be able to do God's will, to be able to stick to God's will, regardless of the circumstances. And they had that. This shows that verse 18 in Daniel 1 shows that they had that. They had their unconditional loyalty to God's will. Aquí vemos en Daniel 1:18 que ellos estaban en el nombre de Dios, porque ellos tenían la lealtad de seguir a Dios. No importa lo que Dios lo quisiera, no importa lo que Dios quisiera. So that conviction that I mentioned before, that is not after any benefit, it is not motivated by fear or fleshly desires. That conviction is founded on your decision to hold Christ as your center. So there we have an example of Daniel's friends, unconditional loyalty in a great scene. So that's a great scene that we have there, right? But the greater challenge, more impressively, is having unconditional loyalty and having unconditional faith in the subtleties of your character. So when you have to make a big decision, that's obvious is you can have unconditional loyalty. But sometimes it's not so clear. The situation is not so clear when you can have unconditional loyalty. Entonces aquí vemos en esta escena donde está los amigos de Daniel, vemos que ellos tienen una lealtad incondicional. Pero hay veces que la prueba es más sutil. The trial is a lot more subtle. Porque esta fue una prueba obvia. Pero hay veces que si no ponemos atención, podemos fallar sin saber. So sometimes if we don't pay attention, we can fail without knowing. And so I'm going to read from Prophets and Kings, voy a leer de Profetas y Reyes. So, and this is the scene. This is the scene when Daniel and his friends were brought into King Nebuchadnezzar. The king did not compel the Hebrew youth to renounce their faith in favor of idolatry. So the king did not seek to convert them by force. So that's where he's smart, right? Because if you convert them by force, they're going to push away. If you push somebody, they're going to push away, and that becomes harder. If you try to convert somebody by force, and they do end up converting by force, they're always going to end up having that grudge. So the king is smart. Entonces aquí vemos, está en la escena de cuando Daniel y sus amigos fueron traídos al rey, a Babilonia, en el capítulo 1. Y aquí dice que el rey no forzó lo estoy traduciendo, el rey no forzó a los hebreos, a los jóvenes hebreos, que denuncien su fe en favor de idolatría. Porque, y el rey era inteligente para esto. Porque para persuadir a alguien, si tratas de usar la fuerza, van a empujar para atrás. Y aunque logres convencerlos por la fuerza, siempre van a tener como un rencor contra ti. By giving them the names, so the king said, okay, yeah, you can hold on to your faith, that's fine. By giving them the names of significant of idolatry, by bringing them daily into the close association of idolatrous customs, and under the influence of seductive rites of heathen worship, he hoped to induce them to renounce the religion of their nation and to unite them with the worship of the Babylonians. Entonces aquí describe Elena White la situación, que primero dijo, ok, pueden tomar su fe, está bien, pero les dio nombres que tenían su significado en idolatría. Uno, diariamente fueron asociados cercamente con customs, costumbres idólatras, y fueron diariamente expuestos a los ritos seductivos e influencias de la alabanza idólatra, porque el rey esperaba inducirlos a que renunciaran a su religión y que aceptaran a la alabanza babilónica. At the very outset of their career, there came to them decisive test of character. It was provided that they should eat the food and drink, so la comida, el vino, todo era tentación, todo era tentación. Así that's how the king set it up. Así lo había puesto el rey, so that everything would be temptation. In this, the king thought to give them an expression of his favor and of the solicitude of their welfare. But a portion had been offered to idols. The food from the king's table was consecrated to idolatry, and one partaking of it would be regarded as offering homage to the gods. Entonces, aquí dice que la comida que fue ofrecida a Daniel y sus amigos, que eran ofrenda a los ídolos, y si comían de eso iban a ser más cercamente de practicar en las costumbres idólatras. Even a mere pretense of eating the food or drinking the wine would be denial of their faith. Nor dared they risk enervating effect of luxury and dissipating the physical, mental, and spiritual development. Yeah. Entonces, so we see here that everything was temptation. So they were exposed to idolatrous practices. They were exposed to food. They were exposed to all these temptations. And when you're exposed to so many temptations, and this is very smart of the king, because that's a very good technique to persuade others. And when there's so many things that can go wrong, and you don't even notice it. Hay muchas cosas, hay muchos lugares donde puedes caer y ni darte cuenta. And so this kind of reminds me, I'm not going to have you turn to it, but Jesus' temptations in the wilderness. And las tentaciones de Jesús en el desierto. And when you look at Jesus' temptations, you know Satan uses Scripture to tell Jesus what Jesus is tempted to, or what Jesus is already tempted to do. Satanás usa la Escritura para poder hacer a Jesús algo que Jesús ya está tentado a hacer. Now, I don't know about you, but if I put myself in that situation, right? If I put myself, si yo me pongo en esa situación donde está Jesús, and, you know, like maybe I haven't eaten for a long time, I'm fasting, and Satan tells me, oh, you're the Son of God, you can turn these rocks to stone. And he backs it up with the Scripture. I would say, you know what, well, I am kind of hungry. And the Bible does say this. Well, yeah, I guess I am hungry. I'll eat something. So that easy, you know, because your mind is already set. Your mind is already tempted. So little by little, you look for justifications. You look for, even in the Bible, even in the Word of God, you look for justifications to say, you know what, it's okay. You can partake of that. It's no big deal. Entonces, cuando Jesús estaba tratando, tenemos el ejemplo que Satanás usa la Escritura para que Jesús caiga en una tentación que ya tiene. Si yo me pongo en esa situación y tengo hambre y Satanás me dice, mira, tú puedes convertir esas piedras en pan, y la Biblia dice así, y dice que pues hacerlo. Si yo estuviera en la posición de Jesús, yo diría, pues sí, la Biblia sí dice eso, y tengo mucha hambre. Ok, pues hay que me perdone Dios, o Dios me va a perdonar, o lo que sea, o cualquier escritura que diga, que te apoye esa tentación. Porque cuando estás en tentación, tu mente busca a cómo justificar el pecado, busca formas de justificar el pecado. And then there's another example of the prophet. Who's familiar? Are you guys familiar with the prophet that got eaten by a lion, that got attacked by a lion? Yes. No? Okay, well, let's go to it. Let's learn that story. It's in 1 Kings 13. Primera de Reyes 13. Del 11 al 24. 1 Kings 13, from 11 to 24. And you can read that story, but I will read from, yo voy a leer del 14. I will read from verse 14. And he went after the man of God and found him sitting under an oak. So here we have a prophet. Sí, Primera de Reyes 13. Del 11 al 24. Y les voy a decir la historia brevemente. I will just tell you the story briefly. So the prophet that cursed Jeroboam's altar, God told him to go back a certain way. To come one way and to go back another way, a different way. And so he's on that. And as he's going away, another prophet finds him. Another prophet, and this is the prophet. So there you have the story. I'll read it from Prophets and Kings because it's more brief. Lo voy a leer ahí tienen la historia. La pueden seguir. Pero yo voy a leer de Profetas y Reyes. So, it says, well, it would have been for the prophet had adhered to his purpose to return to Judea without delay. While traveling homeward by another route, he was overtaken by an aged man who claimed to be a prophet and who made false representations to the men of God, declaring, I am a prophet also, as thou art. And an angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with thee into thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water. Again and again the lie was repeated, and the invitation urged until the man of God was persuaded to return. So aquí tenemos en Profetas y Reyes, dice la historia de que el profeta que Dios había escogido ya se estaba yendo a casa, pero vino otra persona de edad y dijo, oh, yo también soy profeta, no te preocupes, yo también soy profeta. Un ángel me dijo a mí que no te fueras por ahí, pero me dijo a mí que yo te invitaré a mi casa y para que comamos. Entonces repitió y lo seguí convenciendo hasta que se convenció y dijo, ok, pues voy contigo. Because the true prophet allowed himself to take course contrary to the line of duty, God permitted him to suffer the penalty of transgression. While he and the one who had invited him to return to Bethel were sitting together at the table, the inspiration of the Almighty came upon the false prophet, and he cried unto the men of God that came from Judah, saying, Thus saith the Lord, forasmuch as thou hast disobeyed the mouth of the Lord, and hast not kept the commandment which the Lord thy God commanded thee, thy carcass shall not come unto the sepulchre of thy fathers. Entonces, cuando él estaba en la casa del hombre, vino la palabra de Dios y dijo que como no le hizo caso a lo que le mandó, que su cuerpo no iba a ser enterrado con sus padres. So the lion attacks him as soon as he leaves the house. Entonces lo ataca el león después. And you can read that story. So sometimes the trial that tests your conviction is not that obvious, but it's in subtle aspects of our character that we have not looked at. A veces lo que prueba nuestra convicción no está tan obvia, pero son en lugares más sutiles. The small temptations, las tentaciones pequeñas. And if you're not aware of these subtle aspects of your character, if you don't do the work to have the conviction to choose God in the most subtlest parts of your character, Satan is going to attack those things. Si tú no haces el esfuerzo de tener esa convicción hacia Dios en las partes sutiles de tu carácter, Satanás va a atacar esas partes. Satanás va a atacar esas partes débiles. Satan will attack the weak parts, and you may end up getting in by line. But this is not to scare you, because in the process of your growth, God knows your heart. God knows your heart, and God knows the effort that you're making. God knows how much effort you're putting into developing your character, into developing that conviction. Pero esto no es para espantarles, porque Dios conoce el corazón de nosotros. Y Dios conoce nuestros esfuerzos. Y Dios sabe si tú estás haciendo un esfuerzo. Y Dios también sabe en las partes donde estás débil. Y Dios te trata de decir dónde corregir. Y si estás débil en unas partes y no te das cuenta, Dios también sabe eso. So to finish off, I want to just go to this last verse, Jeremiah 1:17, Jeremías 1:17. And this is just to show an example of the conviction that we should have. The unconditional conviction. To have faith and to have unconditional loyalty. And this is God talking to Jeremiah. Y este es Dios hablando a Jeremías. Y este es un ejemplo de cómo uno tiene que tener fe, uno tiene que tener lealtad incondicional. But you, dress yourself for work. Arise and say to them everything that I command you. Do not be dismayed by them, lest I confound you before them. ¿Cómo dice en español?
Dice, tú pues ciñete y levántate y diles todo lo que te mandé. No temas ante ellos para que no te quebrante yo ante ellos.
So, when you are facing those temptations, when you are facing that furnace, when you're facing those lions, you have to have that unconditional faith and that unconditional loyalty, where it doesn't matter, you disregard whatever happens, but you know that God is with you. And when you know that God is with you, God will grant you the courage. And it says to not, the verse says to not be dismayed, to follow through with what God says regardless of what He puts you through. And if you do that, I guarantee you that regardless of the ups and downs that we experience in these battles, you will always come out alive on the winning side of it. Entonces, dice, si tienes ese coraje, ese valor, esa lealtad incondicional y esa fe incondicional, que no importa por lo que te ponga Dios, tú vas a ser leal. Te garantizo que no importa de los altos y los bajos que experimentes en las batallas de aquí, vas a salir vivo en el lado ganador de la guerra.